There's a specific number where your entire relationship with money quietly changes, and it's not $1 million, dollars. It's not even close. Most finance experts will tell you that wealth begins at seven figures, or that some magic six-digit number is what you should be chasing, but what they miss is a much smaller turning point. And once you cross it, everything shifts. So today I want to walk you through exactly why $20,000, not a million, is the real turning point where saving stops feeling like sacrifice and starts feeling like momentum. I've spent more than 30 years as a finance and accounting executive across multinational companies, and in that time, I've watched two very different stories play out again and again. People who build wealth without straining themselves, and people who work just as hard for years without ever getting ahead. And if you want to belong to the first group instead of the second, stay with me because I'm about to show you exactly where that divide begins. Before I explain why $20,000 is the real key, the true kingmaker, I want to ask you something simple. When you picture real wealth, what comes to mind? Is it money inherited from family? Or is it wealth built $3 and $5 at a time? Because wealth rarely arrives the way we first imagine it. There are financial thresholds along the way, and crossing them by taking the right steps is what separates people who build real wealth from those who spend their whole lives living paycheck to paycheck. And the first of those thresholds is $20,000. Let me start with an image. Imagine a wheelbarrow. You have to push up a hill, and you already know the hardest part is grabbing hold of it and getting it moving. You strain, you sweat, you barely make any progress, and you start wondering if this is even possible. But once you build enough momentum, something almost magical happens. It starts moving faster on its own, and eventually you reach the top. $20,000 is the moment your financial wheelbarrow finally crests that hill. Everything before this point feels like pushing uphill against gravity. Everything after it feels like gravity is finally working in your favor. But here's the part that will genuinely surprise you. The difference isn't only mathematical, it isn't only about having more money to invest. The real magic happens in your brain. When you have no money, your brain operates from a scarcity mindset. You're focused purely on survival. Every financial decision passes through a filter of fear and anxiety. You take the first job offer without weighing its downsides because you don't feel you can afford to be selective. You stay in a job you dislike because leaving feels too risky. You say yes to things you don't actually want. And while you're focused on surviving, your brain can't even perceive opportunities, let alone think clearly about them. It's completely consumed by emergencies and short term survival. But once you cross that $20,000 threshold, something extraordinary happens. Your brain is freed from anxious, fearful thinking and finds room to think differently instead of asking, how will I make it to my next paycheck? You start asking, how can I grow what I've already saved? And when it comes to building wealth, you become someone who can anticipate financial setbacks and act ahead of them instead of just reacting to them. Research from the investment giant Vanguard shows that even $2,000 in emergency savings increases financial well being by 21%. And that's less than what most people spend on a new gadget or a vacation, yet that small amount pulls you out of pure survival mode and creates a real psychological shift. And once that emergency fund grows to roughly 6 months of living expenses, close to $20,000, you gain another 13% increase in financial well being. And at that point, the question your brain is asking evolves from how do I survive to how do I build wealth. The math starts to feel exciting instead of stressful, and the calculations shift from how will I make it to next payday to how can I generate more return from what I've already saved. Let's say you're saving between $750 and $1,000 a month, earning a 5% return on your investments. Reaching that first $20,000 takes roughly 19 to 20 months, almost 2 years of discipline, sacrifice, and delayed gratification, and it isn't easy. Most people give up somewhere along that stretch. But here's the part that will genuinely surprise you. Reaching your second $20,000 doesn't take another 20 months. It takes only about 17 because your first $20,000 is now working alongside your ongoing monthly contributions, generating its own returns. You're putting in the same effort, saving the same amount every month, taking on the same risk, but because you now have more money working for you, you gain 2 full months back on your timeline, and that is compound interest at work. By your third $20,000, everything gets even easier. The timeline keeps shrinking. Your money is doing the heavy lifting for you. And once your investment portfolio reaches $400,000, you can generate your next $20,000 in as little as 5 months. The same amount that took you nearly 2 years to save when you first started is now happening almost automatically because of the investments you already made. And while that very first threshold might feel impossible, every $20,000 milestone after it becomes progressively easier to reach. You might be picturing that wealthy people have access to some hidden world of exclusive high yield funds and opportunities that ordinary people can't reach. And while that becomes true at truly elite levels of wealth, it isn't what powers this $20,000 foundation. The real explanation is far simpler and far more encouraging. It's just basic math. If you invest $1,000 and it grows 10% in a year, you earn $100. But if your investment is $10,000, that same 10% return earns you $1,000. And that's exactly why crossing $20,000 is such a significant turning point. Before this point, your investment income is tiny, but once you reach $20,000, even at a modest 8% return, without doing anything at all, you earn about $1,600. Your savings are finally working for you. And here's what most people completely overlook, and it might be the most important point of all. When you save $20,000, you've actually accomplished something far bigger than accumulating money in a bank account because you've fundamentally reprogrammed your brain and your psychology, and you've built the single most important financial habit that will shape the rest of your life. If you aren't earning a high income, building $20,000 from zero demands real discipline, tracking where every dollar of your income goes each month, saying no to certain pleasures, resisting the subconscious urge to spend as your savings grow, and doing all of this consistently for years. And here's the key insight. You will have proven to yourself that you can control your money instead of your money controlling you. Along this path, you build a new life skill. You become someone capable of delaying gratification when it truly matters. Before you started saving, even buying a $4 coffee might have required some mental negotiation. But once you cross that first $20,000 threshold, your priorities shift. You stop getting stuck on small things, and through another psychological shift, you start seeing opportunities instead of threats. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, any unexpected expense feels like a disaster: a car repair, a medical bill, a broken laptop, a rent increase. All of these become financial emergencies that strain your entire month. But once you have $20,000 in the bank, those same unexpected events become minor inconveniences instead of catastrophes. And at this stage, you start noticing opportunities around you and weighing risks you previously couldn't afford to take. You might finally be able to evaluate a friend's business proposal, looking for an investment partner, run the numbers, and see whether it genuinely makes financial sense. You're now in a position to evaluate potential returns on investment. And this is exactly what wealthy people mean when they say money attracts money. Having money gives you options, and options create more opportunities to make money. And here's another thing that might surprise you. You start caring less about small purchases. When you have no money, every single purchase becomes an obsession. You agonize over whether something you could technically do yourself at home is really worth paying for. And that kind of thinking drains your mental energy. What actually matters are the big decisions: where you invest, where you live, what you drive, how much you save. These choices can move your wealth by thousands of dollars over time, so instead of stressing over small expenses, redirect that energy toward optimizing your overall costs, maximizing your income, and making sure your investment plan is solid. And that shift in focus frees up your mental capacity to see the bigger decisions far more clearly. Now, let's talk about what happens to your career once you reach this turning point. Saving $20,000 doesn't just change your relationship with money, it changes your relationship with work itself. If you're counting down the days until your next paycheck the moment you receive one, you are essentially trapped in your current job. Your boss might be difficult, your coworkers might be exhausting, your work might make no sense to you, but you can't leave because you need that next paycheck to survive. You can't ask for the raise you deserve because you're afraid of losing your job. And you can't explore other opportunities because taking time off for interviews feels far too risky. But $20,000 changes that entire dynamic. You could leave tomorrow and manage for months while you find something better, which means you're negotiating from a position of strength instead of desperation, and that psychological shift changes how you show up at work. You start asking for the raise you've earned because the worst outcome is simply hearing, well, your relaxed relationship with your job changes how people treat you at work. You become more confident, more assertive, more willing to take on ambitious projects, and people notice that confidence, which tends to translate into more recognition and more money. Simply knowing that $20,000 exists, even if you never touch it, completely changes the way you show up professionally. The more successful you become at work, the more you save, and that gives you even more confidence and more opportunities. Everything starts moving upward together, but here's where most people mismanage this turning point. Once they hit $20,000, they start treating it like a finish line and slip into spending, as if this milestone has earned them a reward. Please don't do that. That $20,000 isn't a prize for good behavior, it isn't a new car or a nice vacation. It's a threshold, and the people who keep building past it are the ones who lay the foundation for their entire financial future. Because if you let compound interest work patiently, that foundation can grow into wealth that lasts generations. Over a lifetime, most people spend more money on their car than they would ever need to achieve real financial freedom. Between the car payment, insurance, maintenance, and fuel, people easily spend around $700 a month, and over 40 years, that adds up to at least $400,000 just to get from one place to another. And then they wonder why they never managed to save enough for retirement. What makes it even more painful is that a brand new car loses about 20% of its value the moment it leaves the dealership lot. So you're not just spending money at that point, you're actively destroying it. Compare that to investing that same amount in a diversified portfolio instead. And instead of watching your money disappear, you get to watch it multiply. These emotional purchases feel good. They make you look and feel successful, both to yourself and to everyone around you. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that as long as you understand what you're trading off. That car payment might make you feel wealthy, but it isn't actually making you wealthier. And this is exactly where having $20,000 already saved completely changes how you evaluate a big purchase. Instead of asking, can I afford these monthly payments? You start asking, what does this actually cost me in terms of my future wealth? That car you're eyeing isn't really $25,000 or $30,000. That same $25,000 invested over 20 years could have grown to over $200,000. Driving a reliable used car isn't a sacrifice. It's a choice that funds your future freedom. The person driving the brand new car might be stressed about their monthly payments, while the person driving the reliable used car is quietly building their retirement and sleeping better at night. And this shift in thinking affects every major financial decision you make: your home, private schooling, luxury vacations, expensive hobbies that fade with trends. Everything gets evaluated through the lens of opportunity cost. Not living like tomorrow is your last day and spending everything on momentary joy, but making conscious choices about where your money actually goes. And once you do that, you often realize that many of the things you thought you wanted were never things you truly chose for yourself in the first place. The real question becomes independence in 5 to 10 years, or momentary pleasure from an expensive hobby right now. And this isn't about becoming someone who denies themselves every joy in life. It's about spending your money intentionally on what genuinely matters to you instead of what doesn't. Once you have clear financial goals and truly understand the power of compound interest, it becomes so much easier to separate what you actually want from what you actually need. And here's the truth: $20,000 won't make you rich overnight, but it fundamentally changes how you see money and opportunity. It rewires your thinking at the deepest level, and it comes down to a single choice: surviving or thriving. Trust me, my friend, your future self will thank you for making the right one. I look forward to your questions in the comments. I read every single one of them. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. See you in the next video.